The throne room of Emperor stretched for nearly 1,000 meters, its walls carved from black stone taken from dead worlds. Pillars of frozen lightning rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. At the far end, sitting upon a throne made from the bones of conquered kings, the ruler of 12-star systems waited for his guests. Was ancient by any species measure. His scaled body had seen 3 centuries pass. His eyes, burning with cold yellow fire, had watched empires rise and fall. He had crushed rebellions, burned worlds, and built the greatest slave trade network in the known galaxy. Nothing surprised him anymore. Until the humans came. His advisor, a thin creature named, approached the throne with careful steps. "Great Emperor, the reports from the Outer Rim have been confirmed. The human general has struck again." Claws scraped against bone. "Tell me." 3 more slave ships intercepted. 2,000 workers freed and given sanctuary on the human colony world. Our captains were executed publicly. Kept his eyes on the floor. The humans broadcast the footage across all channels. The Emperor said nothing for a long moment. Humans, such a young species. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, crawling out of their single planet like insects discovering a garden. They were soft, fragile. They lived barely a century and broke so easily. Yet this one human had become a problem. Her name said General Laura Briggs, commander of the 7th Human Expeditionary Force. She has been stationed in the Outer Rim for 3 years. Pulled up a holographic image. The human female was neither tall nor impressive. Brown hair cut short, a face that showed signs of age and stress, nothing special at all. She claims our slave operations violate galactic law. "Galactic law exists because I allow it to exist," rose from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. "Summon the..." Went pale. "Emperor, surely there are other options. Diplomatic pressure, economic sanctions, the humans value trade and..." "Summon them." They arrived within the hour. 7 figures emerged from a ship that seemed to drink the light around it. Each one was a master killer from a different species. Their leader was a reptilian hunter whose scales shifted colors like oil on water. His species had evolved as perfect predators on a world where everything was prey. Knelt before the throne, but there was no fear in his posture. They served the Emperor because it suited them, not because they had to. "You have a contract for us," said. It was not a question. Gestured, and the hologram of General Briggs appeared between them. "This human has disrupted my operations. She has cost me ships, workers, and reputation. I want her dead." Studied the image with mild interest. "A human. We have killed their kind before. They scream quite loudly. I want it done quietly. No traces back to me. Make it look like an accident or a random attack." The Emperor leaned forward. "Do this, and I will pay you enough to buy your own moon." The assassin's jaws parted in what might have been a smile. "We accept." Across the vast emptiness of space, on a world called New, General Laura Briggs stood at her office window and watched the sun set over mountains that reminded her of home. The colony was young, barely 20 years old, but it had already become something beautiful. Farms spread across the valleys. Children played in streets that had never known war. She intended to keep it that way. A knock came at her door. Colonel Daniel Park entered, his face carrying the weight of bad news. He was a solid man in his 40s, a career soldier who had served with Briggs for 15 years. She trusted him with her life. "Intelligence report just came in," Park said. "They are not happy about our recent activities." "I would be disappointed if they were." Briggs turned from the window. "What else?" "Chatter suggests retaliation is coming. Not military, something quieter." Park set a data pad on her desk. "We have heard the word mentioned 3 times in intercepted communications." Briggs picked up the pad and scrolled through the information. There were legends in certain circles. Assassins who had never failed a contract. Killers who could reach any target anywhere, no matter how well protected. "How many refugees do we have in the settlement camps?" she asked. 2,312, mostly families. Park watched her carefully. "General, if they are coming, we could move you to a secure location. The orbital station would be abandoning everyone down here." Briggs shook her head. "Those people came to us because we promised them safety. I will not hide while they remain exposed." "Then what do we do?" She set the pad down and walked to a cabinet on the far wall. Inside, arranged with care, were weapons she had collected over 20 years of service. Knives from 6 different worlds. Pistols modified beyond factory standards. A monoblade that could cut through ship armor. "We prepare," she said. "They are predators. They hunt targets who run and hide. They are not used to prey that fights back." Park allowed himself a small smile. "You want to set a trap?" "I want to send a message." Briggs selected the monoblade and tested its edge. "Emperor thinks he can reach across the stars and murder anyone who defies him. He needs to learn that humans do not die easily, and we do not forgive." That night, News Defense Grid detected 7 ships entering the system. They used civilian transponder codes stolen from merchant vessels. They came in scattered patterns to avoid suspicion. But Briggs had placed additional sensors in the outer system weeks ago, and she saw them coming. She watched the tracking data from her command center while her security teams moved into position. Lieutenant Shaw, a young officer with steady hands and cold eyes, reported that all units were ready. "They will come for me first," Briggs said. "They always eliminate leadership before striking at other targets. Let them think they have surprise on their side." "And if they succeed?" Shaw asked. Briggs looked at him with something that might have been amusement. "Then Colonel Park takes command and burns their ships out of the sky. But they will not succeed, Lieutenant. I have been fighting since before you were born. I have survived ambushes, assassinations, and 3 different wars." She picked up her blade and headed for her quarters, where the first killer would likely strike. "These think they are coming to hunt a helpless target. They are about to discover what happens when humans decide to hunt back." They moved through the darkness like shadows given form. They had done this 1,000 times before on 100 different worlds. The pattern was always the same: strike fast, strike silent, leave no witnesses. Split his team into 3 groups. He took 2 assassins with him toward the command center where the human general slept. 2 others would disable the communication arrays. The final pair would plant explosives near the power generators as a distraction. Everything was proceeding perfectly. The first assassin to reach her target was a female whose species could shift their bodies through solid matter for short distances. She phased through the outer wall of the military compound without triggering any alarms. Guards walked past her position without seeing her. Security cameras recorded nothing but empty corridors. She found the general's quarters on the 3rd floor, a simple room for someone of such rank. A bed, a desk, personal items that meant nothing to an assassin who had killed hundreds. Checked her scanner, heat signature confirmed, someone was in the bed. She drew her neural blade, a weapon that would shut down the human's nervous system instantly. A painless death if such things mattered. They took professional pride in clean kills. She phased through the door and raised her weapon. The bed was filled with pillows arranged under blankets, a simple trick, a child's trick. Spun around just as the monoblade separated her head from her shoulders. General Briggs stepped out of the shadows where she had been waiting for 3 hours. The assassin's body fell without a sound. "One," Briggs said quietly. Across the compound, Lieutenant Shaw led a 4-person security team through the maintenance tunnels beneath the communication center. Intelligence suggested they would try to cut off contact with orbital forces before making their main strike. Shaw was 28 years old. He had joined the military because he believed in protecting people who could not protect themselves. He had never killed anyone before tonight. That changed quickly. Two assassins dropped from ceiling vents with weapons blazing. Energy bolts tore through the narrow tunnel. Private Lisa took a shot to the chest and collapsed. Corporal Hector pushed Shaw aside and caught the second bolt in his throat. Shaw did not freeze. He did not panic. He raised his rifle and fired 3 rounds into the nearest assassin, a creature with too many limbs. The bullets punched through its exoskeleton and painted the wall behind it. The second assassin, a pale humanoid with black eyes, lunged forward with a blade aimed at Shaw's heart. Private Owen Cross tackled the creature from the side. They rolled together on the ground, struggling for control of the weapon. Shaw stepped forward and pressed his pistol against the assassin's skull. "Stop moving." The creature hissed something in a language Shaw did not understand. Then it triggered a small device on its wrist, and Cross barely rolled away before a burst of energy turned the assassin into ash. "They have suicide triggers," Cross said, breathing hard. "They would rather die than be captured." Shaw looked at the bodies of good soldiers, his soldiers. He felt something cold settle into his chest, and he knew it would never fully leave. "Report to command," he said. "Tell them we stopped 2 but lost 2, and tell the general she was right. They came exactly where she said they would." Watched the chaos unfold from a ridge overlooking the compound. His communication device buzzed with bad news. Was dead. The communication team had failed with casualties on both sides. Only the demolition team reported success, but their explosions had merely knocked out secondary power grids. The human general had known they were coming. Beside him, his 2 remaining companions shifted nervously. A massive 4-armed warrior from a heavy-gravity world growled his frustration. This was supposed to be simple. 1 human female, nothing more. "She set traps," said a slender being whose species communicated through both sound and pheromones. "She anticipated our approach vectors, our timing, our targets." Said nothing, he was too busy thinking. In all his years as a hunter, he had killed senators, generals, crime lords, and royalty. Every species had patterns. Every target made mistakes. Humans were supposed to be the easiest of all soft creatures from a gentle world who had stumbled into space by accident. But this human was different. She had studied, though. She had learned their methods, and she had prepared not just defenses but counterattacks designed to make them bleed. "We underestimated her," admitted. The words tasted bitter. "What do we do now?" demanded. "We retreat, regroup at the station, plan a second approach." Began moving back toward their hidden landing site. "The Emperor wanted a quiet death. He may have to accept a louder one." They reached their ships and lifted off without further contact. As they broke atmosphere, took one last look at the planet below. Somewhere down there, a human woman had done what no one else had ever managed. She had made the run. In her command center, General Briggs examined the dead assassin's equipment. The body had been moved to a secure location for study. The weapons were unlike anything human forces had encountered before. Colonel Park stood beside her, reading reports from across the compound. "Final count is 2 enemy dead, 2 captured explosives teams. We lost 3 soldiers. Lieutenant Shaw is requesting permission to join any pursuit operation." "Shaw stays here to rebuild his team." Briggs turned the assassin's communication device over in her hands. "These are elite killers working for the Empire. The Emperor ordered this. Who else has the resources to hire them?" Briggs found what she was looking for, a small sigil embedded in the device's casing, a mark that identified the bearer as a member of the guild. "They will try again. They never abandon a contract." Park studied her face. He had known Briggs for 15 years, and he could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. She was not thinking about defense. She was thinking about something much more aggressive. "General, whatever you are planning, Prepare my shuttle. Briggs set the device down and walked toward the door. And pull 4 volunteers for a covert mission, people who can handle themselves in a fight. Where are you going? She stopped at the doorway and looked back at him. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something dangerous. They came to hunt me. Now I am going to hunt them. She smiled, and there was nothing warm about it. It is time the galaxy learned what happens when you try to kill a human and fail. Station hung in the darkness between stars like a tumor made of metal and bad intentions. It had been built centuries ago as a mining outpost, but those days were long forgotten. Now it served as a haven for criminals, smugglers, and those who needed to disappear. They had used it as a safe house for decades. No law reached this place. No authority asked questions. It was perfect for regrouping after a failed mission. Sat in a private room in the station's lower levels, surrounded by what remained of his team. Paced back and forth, his 4 arms clenching and unclenching. Sat perfectly still, but her scent markers betrayed her anxiety. 2 others had joined them from the backup team, bringing their total number to 5. 5 assassins who had never failed a contract. 5 killers who were now hiding from a single human female. We should have brought more forces, growled. Overwhelmed her defenses with numbers. The Emperor wanted quiet, reminded him. A surgical strike, no evidence connecting him to the death. The Emperor is a fool. The room went silent. Speaking against Emperor was dangerous even here. Let the moment pass. We will try again, different approach, study her patterns more carefully, find weakness we missed. And if there is no weakness, asked. Before could answer, his communication device buzzed. A message from the Emperor himself, responding to his earlier request for reinforcements. Contract accepted. Contract will be completed. No reinforcements available or necessary. Do not contact this channel again until the target is dead. Read the message over his shoulder and snarled. He abandons us. He expects us to succeed. Deleted the message. We have never disappointed him before. There is a first time for everything, said a voice from the doorway. A human female stood there. Average height. Brown hair cut short. She wore civilian clothes and carried no visible weapons, but her eyes held the same look he'd seen in the eyes of every predator he had ever known. General Laura Briggs had found them. Moved first, charging across the room with all 4 arms reaching for her throat. He was fast for his size, capable of crushing stone with his grip. Briggs did not run. She stepped sideways at the last moment and drove a small blade into the gap between his secondary and tertiary shoulder plates. The weapon was coated with something that made his muscles seize. He crashed to the ground, paralyzed but alive. Drew his weapon, but 3 more humans appeared in the doorway behind Briggs. 2 females and 1 male, all armed with military-grade rifles aimed directly at the assassins. Sergeant Maria Vega, Briggs said, gesturing to the woman on her left. Corporal Tony and Private Sandra Cole. They volunteered for this mission after hearing what you did to their friends on New. Scent markers flooded the room with fear pheromones. How did you find us? Your ships have energy signatures, unique ones. Briggs walked further into the room while her team covered the assassins. I tracked you here 3 days ago. I have been watching, learning your routines, counting your numbers. 3 days, felt his scales flush cold. She had been hunting them for 3 days and they never knew. What do you want? He asked. Information, the name of who hired you, details about the contract. Briggs stopped in front of him. Up close, she seemed even less impressive, a creature that should have been easy prey. Give me what I want and some of you might live. The do not betray clients. Then the die. She turned and walked out of the room. Her soldiers followed, dragging the paralyzed with them. The door sealed shut and heard the locks engage from outside. She is going to starve us out, one of the backup assassins asked. Did not think so. Humans were not patient creatures. They did not wait when they could act. He was right. Over the next 2 days, General Briggs systematically hunted through the maze of station. She never attacked directly. She waited for them to separate, to make mistakes, to grow desperate. The first backup assassin died in a cargo bay. He had gone to gather supplies from their hidden cache. Sergeant Vega was waiting. She killed him with his own blade and left the body where the others would find it. The second backup assassin tried to flee the station entirely. Corporal intercepted him at the docking bay. The fight was brief and brutal. Took a wound to his shoulder, but the assassin took 3 bullets to the chest. Attempted to use her species' pheromone abilities to confuse the humans and escape. She did not know that humans had weak sensitivity to chemical signals. Private Cole tracked her by sound alone and cornered her in an abandoned section of the station. Surrendered, she was the first in history to do so. By the end of the second day, only remained free. 3 of his team were dead and were prisoners. He was alone in a station full of enemies, hunted by a creature that should have been nothing but a soft target. He finally understood what humans truly were. His species had become apex predators through superior strength and speed. They dominated their world because they were bigger and faster than everything else. Humans had become apex predators through different means. They were patient. They were adaptable. They held grudges across generations. They did not simply defeat their enemies. They erased them. On the third night, General Briggs walked into the cantina where had taken refuge. She sat down across from him at a small table. The bar was empty. The few station residents who remained had fled when they learned they were being hunted. She carried no weapons that could see. She was completely vulnerable. "I know who hired you," she said. "Emperor, he wants me dead because I freed his slaves." Said nothing. "Tell me everything about his defenses, his palace location, his guard rotations." Briggs leaned forward. "Do that and I will let you live." "The do not." "They are dead." Her voice was flat, final. "You are the last one. There is no guild anymore. There is only you sitting across from the human who destroyed everything you built." Stared at her for a long moment. Then he lunged across the table with his venomous claws extended, aiming for her throat. A pistol pressed against his skull from behind. "General Briggs never goes anywhere alone," Sergeant Vega said quietly. "You should have learned that by now." Froze. He had been outmaneuvered again, outthought, outhunted. "Last chance," Briggs said. "Talk or die." Looked into her eyes and saw no mercy there. No compassion. Only the cold patience of a predator who had already won. He began to talk. The interrogation lasted 4 hours. Told them everything. The location of Emperor, hidden palace on a moon orbiting the patrol routes of his personal guard, the security systems that protected his throne room, the names of his advisors and their responsibilities. Sergeant Vega recorded every word while Corporal kept his weapon trained on the assassin. Private Cole stood guard at the door, her eyes scanning for any sign of station security deciding to interfere. They did not. Everyone on understood that they had lost, and no one wanted to be next. When finished speaking, General Briggs stood and walked to the window overlooking the station's central hub. Ships came and went below. Criminals conducted their business. Life continued as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. "They have operated for 200 years, said from behind her. "We have killed senators, admirals, planetary governors. We have ended wars and started them. No one has ever hunted us before." Briggs did not turn around. "Then no one ever made you angry before. What will you do now? Return to your colony, hide behind your fleet?" His voice held something that might have been genuine curiosity. "The Emperor will send others. He has endless resources." "I know." Briggs finally turned to face him. "Which is why I am going to visit him personally." Silence filled the room. Even Sergeant Vega looked surprised. "You cannot be serious," said. "That has the largest defense fleet in this sector. You would need an armada just to get close." "I am not bringing an armada." Briggs walked back to the table and sat down across from again. "I am bringing a message." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device, a stasis container designed to preserve biological material during long transports. She set it on the table between them. "Your guild killed 3 of my soldiers on new, good people with families, people I was responsible for." Her voice remained calm, but something dark moved behind her eyes. "Emperor needs to understand that actions have consequences, that humans do not simply accept attacks and move on." Stared at the stasis container. He understood what she intended. "You are going to kill me." "Yes. And the others, and attacked me, he dies." Briggs shrugged. "Surrendered. She will be handed over to the Galactic Authority for trial. She may survive if she cooperates with their investigators." The assassin considered this for a long moment. In his entire career, he had never faced his own death. He had always been the hunter, never the prey. "I could tell you more," he offered. "Intelligence about other operations, other contracts, names of clients who hired us in the past." "I already have what I need." Briggs stood again. "Sergeant Vega, please escort our guest to the cargo bay. Make it clean." "Wait," rose from his chair, and Sweppen immediately tracked his movement. "If you are going to kill me, at least tell me why. Not revenge. Humans could have revenge without going to the Emperor personally. Why are you really doing this?" Briggs paused at the door. When she turned, her expression had changed. The coldness remained, but something else was there now, something that looked almost like sadness. "Because someone has to." She met his eyes directly. "The Empire has enslaved millions, has murdered anyone who opposed him. The galaxy has let this continue because everyone is afraid. And you are not afraid." "I am terrified." Briggs smiled, and it was a strange, bitter expression. "But humans learned a long time ago that fear is not a reason to stop. Fear is just the price we pay for doing what needs to be done." She left the room. Vega and Cole escorted away, remained behind, standing guard over the empty space where the last leader of the had sat. 2 hours later, General Briggs stood in the cargo bay of her shuttle and examined 7 stasis containers arranged in a neat row. Each one held a head. 7 assassins who had come to kill her. 7 messages for the Emperor who sent them. Colonel Park's face appeared on the communication screen. He had been coordinating fleet movements from New, preparing for whatever came next. "General, the 7th Fleet is in position along the border. Admiral Hayes has volunteered to lead the advance force if negotiations fail. Tell Hayes to hold position but stay visible." Briggs sealed the cargo bay and moved toward the cockpit. "I want to see our ships when he looks at his sensors. I want him to know that my death would not be the end. It would be the beginning." "Laura," Park's voice dropped the formal tone. They had been friends too long for ranks to always matter. "Are you sure about this? Walking into his palace alone is suicide." "Not alone. I am bringing 7 guests." She strapped into the pilot seat and began the launch sequence. "And will not kill me, Daniel. He will want to. He will probably dream about it for years, but he will not do it." "How can you be so certain?" Briggs activated the jump drive and watched the stars stretch into lines as the shuttle accelerated toward space. "Because I am going to show him something he has never seen before, something that will terrify him more than any fleet or weapon." She allowed herself a small smile. "I am going to show him what humans are capable of when we decide to stop being polite." The shuttle vanished into the darkness between stars. Back on, Private Sandra Cole helped into a transport pod bound for Galactic Authority space. The assassin was silent during the transfer, her scent markers suppressed to almost nothing. "Why did she spare me?" finally asked as the pod sealed. Cole considered the question. She had only served under General Briggs for 2 years, but she had learned a great deal in that time. "Because you surrendered," Cole said. "The general does not kill people who stop fighting. She is hard, but she is not cruel." And the others, they were not fighting at the end. They would have hunted her forever. Cole stepped back from the pod. "You gave up that name when you surrendered. You are just now someone who made bad choices and got caught." The pod launched, carrying the last survivor of the toward justice. Cole returned to the shuttle where the rest of the team was preparing for their own departure. They would return to New and wait. The general had given them strict orders not to follow her. "She is going to do something crazy," said as they lifted off. "She is going to do something human," Vega corrected. "There is a difference." Rubbed his wounded shoulder and watched shrink behind them. "Is there?" Vega thought about the 7 heads in stasis containers, about a woman walking alone into the heart of an empire, about the look in Briggs's eyes when she talked about the slaves she had freed. "Yes," Vega said quietly, "there is." The throne world had no name. It did not need one. Every species in the galaxy knew it simply as the seat of Empress power, a place where laws were made and broken according to one being's will. The palace itself covered an entire continent. Gardens filled with plants from conquered worlds surrounded towers that scraped the sky. Millions of servants and slaves maintained its endless halls. An army of guards protected its walls. On this day, alarms shattered the morning calm. A single human shuttle had entered the system. It broadcast no weapons signatures. It carried no escort. It simply flew directly toward the palace at cruising speed, ignoring all orders to stop. "Destroy it," commanded Admiral, head of planetary defense. "Wait," the Emperor's advisor stepped forward in the command center. "The vessel is transmitting a message, audio only." The speakers crackled to life, and a human voice filled the room. "This is General Laura Briggs of the Human Expeditionary Force. I am here to see Emperor. I am unarmed and alone. I have something that belongs to him." Hissed in frustration. "It is obviously a trap, a bomb ship, a suicide attack." "Then why announce herself?" Studied the sensor data. The ship contained one human life sign and nothing else. No weapons, no explosives, just a single female in a small shuttle. "Contact the Emperor. Let him decide." Emperor made his decision quickly. He wanted to see the human who had killed his. He wanted to understand how a creature so small and fragile had destroyed his finest assassins. "Let her land," he ordered, in the palace courtyard, surrounded by guards. The shuttle descended through clouds and touched down on polished stone that had witnessed 10,000 years of history. 300 armed soldiers formed a circle around it, weapons raised. Snipers took position on every rooftop. Energy shields hummed to life around the perimeter. The shuttle door opened. General Laura Briggs stepped out carrying a large metal container. She wore simple military dress, no armor, no visible weapons. Her expression was calm as she surveyed the army surrounding her. She began walking toward the palace. The guards parted before her. No one had given orders to shoot, and no one wanted to be the first to act without permission. The human woman walked through their ranks like water flowing through stones, never slowing, never showing fear. Emperor watched from his throne room through a viewing screen. He had seen many things in his centuries of rule. Brave warriors charging into certain death, proud kings kneeling in surrender, entire species begging for mercy. He had never seen anything like this. "She is mad," Admiral said, standing at his side. "No one walks into the heart of enemy territory alone." "Humans do," replied quietly. "Their history is full of such moments, single individuals challenging empires." Briggs entered the throne room. The great hall stretched before her, lined with columns carved from the bones of dead worlds. Nobles and advisors filled the galleries, watching the human intruder with fascination and disgust. At the far end, Emperor sat upon his throne of conquered kings, his ancient eyes burning with cold fire. She walked the entire length of the hall without speaking. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. When she reached the base of the stairs leading to the throne, she stopped. "You sent your best to kill me," Briggs said. Her voice carried clearly through the vast space. "They were not good enough." She opened the container and rolled 7 heads across the polished floor. They came to rest at the foot of the stairs, preserved perfectly in death. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles. Some turned away in horror, others stared with disbelief. There had been legends, invincible shadows that struck from darkness, and a human had destroyed them all. His claws scraped against bone as he gripped his throne. Rage burned in his chest, hot and fierce. He could order her death with a single word. His guards would tear her apart in seconds. But he did not speak. Instead, he studied the creature before him. She stood alone in a room full of enemies. She had walked past hundreds of armed soldiers. She had rolled the heads of his assassins at his feet like trophies. And she had not looked afraid even once. "You have committed acts of war against the Empire," finally said. "You have killed my servants, freed my property, invaded my territory. I have liberated slaves, defended the innocent, punished those who tried to murder me." Briggs met his gaze without flinching. "Now you have a choice." "I have a choice," leaned forward, genuinely amused. "You stand in my palace, surrounded by my army, and you speak of choices. End the slave trade in the Outer Rim, release all human prisoners, recognize the sovereignty of our colonies." Briggs took 1 step up the stairs. Guards tensed but did not fire. "Do this, and we can have peace." "And if I refuse?" "Then I die today, but my fleet is already at your border. My people know what happened here. My government has authorized full military response." Another step. "You can kill me, but you cannot kill what I represent." The Emperor rose from his throne. His massive form cast shadows across the hall. He descended the stairs until he stood directly in front of the human, close enough to kill her with his bare claws. "Your species is young and foolish. You have been in space for barely a century. The Empire has ruled for." "Empires fall." Briggs looked up at him without retreating. "The question is whether yours falls today or learns to adapt." They stood in silence for a long moment, predator and prey, except no one in the room was certain anymore which was which. Thought about the heads at his feet, about the reports of a human woman who had hunted the galaxy's deadliest assassins like animals, about the cold certainty in her eyes. He thought about what her people might do if he killed her. Not might, would. "Leave," he said at last. "Return to your shuttle. Tell your fleet to withdraw from my border." "And the slaves?" "The Outer Rim operations will cease. Prisoners will be released." Each word tasted like poison but forced them out. "The colonies will be left alone." Briggs nodded once. She turned and began walking back across the vast hall. Every eye followed her. No one spoke. At the doorway, she paused and looked back. "My people have a saying, Emperor. Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it." She smiled, and it was the first genuine expression she had shown since entering the palace. "Remember this day. Remember what one human did to you, and remember that there are billions more like me." She left. Admiral waited until her shuttle had cleared the atmosphere before speaking. "My Emperor, why did you let her go? She humiliated us. She made demands in your own throne room." Watched the shuttle disappear into the sky. He thought about the way she had walked through his guards, the way she had stood before him without fear, the way she had smiled at the end. "Because she came here alone," he said slowly. "She walked into my palace, past my army, carrying the heads of the finest killers in the galaxy, and she never once looked afraid." He turned and walked back toward his throne, feeling older than he had in centuries. "Whatever species creates soldiers like that is not one I wish to fight." 6 days later, General Laura Briggs landed on Nu to find thousands of people waiting at the spaceport. Refugees she had saved, soldiers who had fought beside her, colonists who had heard the story of what she had done. Colonel Park met her at the shuttle ramp. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, and his uniform was rumpled. "The Emperor kept his word," he reported. "3 prison ships released their human captives this morning. The slave markets in the Outer Rim are closing." Briggs nodded and began walking through the crowd. Hands reached out to touch her. Voices called her name. Children held signs thanking her for their freedom. "Did you really think he would let you leave alive?" Park asked quietly. Briggs thought about the moment in the throne room, the Emperor's claws inches from her throat, the hundreds of ways she could have died. "I was not certain," she admitted, "but humans have never let uncertainty stop us from doing what needs to be done." She stopped at the edge of the crowd where a small group of former slaves waited. They were the same people she had rescued months ago, the ones who had started everything. An elderly female stepped forward and took her hand. "Thank you," the woman said in broken English. "Thank you for everything." Briggs looked at her, at the scars on her wrists from chains, at the hope in her eyes that had not existed before. "You are welcome," she said softly. "You are all welcome." Above them, the sun set over mountains that reminded her of home. Children laughed and played in streets that had never known war. And across the galaxy, in a palace built on the bones of conquered worlds, an ancient emperor sat alone on his throne and thought about the human who had taught him fear.